Official visit season is here. What SEC schools are really starting to heat up on the recruiting trail? We'll talk about it with Brian Smith. Locked on SEC, the portal crossover edition starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into a crossover edition, Locked On SEC and the Portal. I am Gordy. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com. Our recruiting insider, he is host of the Portal Podcast. He joins us now. We've been doing a weekly segment with him every week. He is Brian Smith because, Brian, man, this time of year, college coaching staffs, they're off the trail, and big-time recruits are flocking to campuses. It is official visit season here. Some of the top uncommitted players, even some of the top committed players, taking official visits. What is this time of year like for recruiting?
Well, before this show, if it tells you anything, I'd lost track of how many podcasts I had scheduled for today. And I mean that literally. I'm not sure if it's 6 or 7 that I have to do. I forgot. So that puts it in perspective right off the bat. But my phone is, I've got another message here that might be something, that another possible commitment, but I'm just going to let it be. There's always somebody telling me somebody's going here, that I get a text from somebody else saying, no, he's going some other place. It is wild. The NIL era makes it very difficult, and I stay away from predictions as much as I can. It's crazy.
Well, let's get into it, because I read 2 articles today on recruiting, and basically they singled out a lot of the big SEC programs. They said Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Auburn, and Ole Miss all trending this week and next week with some of the biggest names in recruiting. So let's kind of start there. I know Alabama is set to have some big visits coming up. Derek Cooper, big-time 5-star player, Caden Prothro, Xavier Griffin. Talk a little bit about what Kalen DeBoer and staff got going on.
They have done a tremendous job of setting up visits for this upcoming weekend through the last weekend. Every one of the kids they're bringing in, you're like, okay, this kid's good, this kid's good, this kid's great. They might be the team between now and the end of June that makes the biggest jump in the rank. Like, they're in the 30s or 40s in the recruiting rankings, right, depending on which service you go by. Completely, and I do mean completely, discount that. It's not who's committed, Chris. It's which kids you have visiting. And the tide are about to roll. They're going to get a lot of different kids coming to campus, like you said. I expect them to finish the month of June and early July, for that matter, on a roll, because they got the elite guys that they've been training for, and they've been patient. This is what Saban did. Saban's teams normally didn't start hot in recruiting because the elite kids wait. That's the same thing that we're seeing now, and I think it's brilliant, because if you get impatient and you take kids that can't play at the level Alabama fans expect, you don't stay long in Tuscaloosa. That's a fact.
What about Auburn? I saw they're taking a shot at some guys. I saw running back Xavier Crowell, Railen Womack, safety, wide receiver Sadarian Morgan, and then the big 5-star tackle Emmanuel Iheanacho, I think, is visiting this week. So some big visits planned for Auburn.
Yeah, they've got a great chance at Jarquez Wilkes as well, pass rusher / linebacker that's from the local area that a ton of schools, A&M and a whole bunch of schools, have offered to. But this next weekend, I think, is really key for Auburn, because they used a bunch of their visits on May 16th and the 30th. This is their probably their final big weekend. They need to get some commits, and they've done a tremendous job at getting kids on campus. But they, like Iheanacho, just as an example, they don't get tackles like that. It has been one of the biggest Achilles heels for the Auburn program for years. It's very well documented. Now they're starting to get some good line, but if they can get somebody like Iheanacho, it changes the perception of your program, and it gives you an offensive tackle to help protect none other than Deuce Knight. So this would be a huge get for them, and they've got a bunch of other local kids. They're trying to fend off Georgia. They're trying to fend off Alabama. Not exactly easy tasks for pretty much every kid that you just talked about there, like Crowell. Everybody kind of thinks he's going to Bama. C.D. Morgan, a lot of people think he's going to Bama. If you don't want to play against those kids, you need to win this weekend. And that is critical. If Auburn comes up short, it's going to be really rough when you play those schools the next few years.
Billy Napier at Florida, he's been making some moves. We'll talk about one of the guys he added here this past week a little bit later in the show, but just on some of the visits the Gators have, I saw Prothro is expected to come through. Running back Davian Gross is coming through. Isaiah Williams, a linebacker, top 40 linebacker. So the Gators, you mentioned a couple weeks ago, man, you said, if you're not recruiting in Gainesville, something's wrong. Looks like Florida's starting to turn it up a little bit.
Yeah, I got a text earlier today from one of my contacts. There's several kids that are expected to pop for Florida. It's a matter of when. A lot of these things are scheduled out to get the most dramatic effect and all that. But they're going to get some kids that many other people thought they were going to get, a Texas or an Ole Miss or Georgia or whatever. So we'll see if it comes to fruition. Their NIL is still pretty good. And believe it or not, kids really like Billy Napier. I know the fan base may not like him that much down there in Gainesville, but the recruits do, and it's still Florida. As I said the last time I was on the show, just about anybody can sell Florida. It's the SEC program in the state of Florida. Got a lot of history. You got the swamp. Not much not to like. So I think they're going to be the biggest riser among all the schools in the country in terms of what they needed, because they need some wins, like just from a political capital standpoint, because of Napier being on the hot seat. I think they're going to get 7 to 10 commits between now and the middle of July. And we're talking about some big time players. A few of them from this past weekend will be included in that.
Yeah, no, I know there was a freshman that they just signed in this past class that high expectations in year one. Dallas Wilson, is there on campus, looked really good throughout the spring, and they're hoping he's going to have a monster year with DJ Lagway and all that. And to me, that's only going to help Napier, right? If Lagway is showing he's the real deal quarterback and he's young, got years to go, Dallas Wilson looks good. Like, I think those incoming freshmen are going to help bring in this next class, because they're going to go, oh, Napier plays young players, and hey, let's go play at Florida. So it could certainly help the case. Of course, winning helps a lot too, right?
Yes. If they don't get it done this season, they'll lose the commitments. It's really simple. The kids don't sign until December, so they don't have anything to worry about from an accountability standpoint. It's on UF to win. And that schedule, again, as you know, Chris, not friendly. It is not friendly at all. So they're going to have to earn it, no doubt about it.
A few more here, real quick on Georgia. I saw they're hosting a couple of heavy hitters this weekend. They got running back Savion Hyder, I guess is how you would say it. Cornerback and Chauncey Kennan, offensive tackle Akine Oboko. So, look, this just is, you come to expect this. Kirby's going to bring in all the big dogs.
Watch out for Georgia with Chauncey Kennan. Let's start there. That is a young man from Booker High School in Sarasota, Florida. Kirby Smart, even when he was with the master himself, Nick Saban at Alabama, he's always been able to swoop in and get really good players from Florida. I don't know what it is. And defensive backs are certainly a part of it. Kennan's like 6'1.5", really long and athletic. He grew up a Knowles fan, but Florida State is obviously not trending upward, and he needs to see something from them. But, I mean, the visits happen before the season does. So I think Georgia's the team I would watch. I would be very nervous if I was Florida State. That's a kid they can't afford to lose, but I think they're going to. Georgia wants him, Florida wants him, Miami, et cetera. Those programs are just in a better spot. Watch out for Georgia, though. That's a really good program. Savion Hyder is shot out of a cannon. He is a freak. He was at the Under Armour game this past January. Even as a junior, I thought he was as talented as any player there, and his speed is just crazy. Georgia hasn't had a home run hitter like him that's at 200 pounds in a while. This is a guy that could come in and play right away, and it's like the athleticism just jumps off the page. Watch out for him. But Michigan, Ohio State, and several other schools, Tennessee, they're all involved too. This is a big weekend for them to get him on campus and make it happen. Aboku, his brother, plays at Georgia. He's a defensive lineman. He's a big offensive tackle himself, a couple of years younger than his older brother. Notre Dame and several other schools are after him, but the Dogs are the most likely school to end up with him. And then just to mention it, Caden Prothro had a really good visit last weekend, arguably the best flex tight end in the class of 2026. He was about an hour and a half from Georgia's campus, and they rolled out the red carpet. So watch out for the Dogs across the board. They're probably going to be in the top 5 by the time we get to fall camp or soon thereafter, and they're just being patient, biding their time for the elite kids. Kirby is a master at recruiting the top guys, and that's why I think he's the best head coach in the country as a recruiter. He's very smart in how they do everything in their recruiting priorities. They don't rush things. They go after the right guys and play the long game.
Yeah, they're sitting at number 6 right now in the 24/7 composite. So then that's just with 12 commits. So, yeah, you got to think they're going to add 8 to 12 to 15 more guys here in the next couple weeks, and yeah, they're going to jump into that top 5 and probably be sitting at number 1 or 2 when it's all said and done. All right, more with Brian Smith coming up next. We'll hit on some of the other big uncommitteds making some visits, as well as touch on some of the guys who did commit in the past week across the SEC. More right after this. More with Brian Smith in just a second, but I want to remind you guys today's episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel, and the NBA playoffs in full swing. We're already here into the NBA Finals, and there's going to be tons of great stuff to bet on each and every single night. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live in-game as well with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. You've got more ways than ever to play smart and win big. For our college fans out there, we've been telling you guys, FanDuel, they've already got the over-under win totals out there that you can bet on and get in on the action this season. If you like Alabama over or under 9.5 wins, Georgia, Texas, all of it right there for you. LSU 8.5 over under, Ole Miss, Tennessee as well. You can find it all at FanDuel.com. And the best part is if you are new to FanDuel, if you've never used them before, it is the perfect time to sign up, because right now, if you've never used them before, if you go to FanDuel.com, you can place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you're going to get $200 back in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we jump back into it, a crossover edition of Locked On SEC in the Portal with our Locked On Recruiting Insider, Brian Smith. And Brian, a couple of names of some of the biggest guys out there that making some moves, looking around still. How about the big D lineman Lamar Brown, number 1 player on ESPN's recruiting board? I know a few other boards have him a little bit lower than that, but 2A lineman from Baton Rouge. And I know he took an official visit to Miami. He's going to head to Texas this weekend. Still got trips to A&M and to LSU. This is a guy that looks like all the SEC schools are after.
Yeah, this is one of the more interesting recruitments that I've witnessed in a while. He's from Baton Rouge. You think, oh, he's just going to go to LSU. Well, he's been very open about taking a bunch of different visits and kind of narrowed it down. And now it's just Miami, LSU, and Texas A&M. LSU and A&M are considered the top teams, and he still could go there, but they've been after him forever. Miami's kind of the sneaky team here. He grew up a Miami fan. Ironically, his Little League team was called the Hurricanes or whatever, so he liked Miami, and he went there for a visit. But now, like, the egg on the face for LSU if they lose a kid like that from Baton Rouge, and they already lost one big-time guy, a safety that's committed to Ohio State, so they're going to put on the pressure. And then A&M's out-of-state recruiting so far this year has just been off the charts. It's been as good as any in the United States. I'm curious to see what he thinks of that situation compared to LSU on the official visits at the end of this month. Lamar's a great kid, and he likes everybody. He's going to have a hard time saying no to everybody. This one's hard to call. I wouldn't want to make a prediction, but I mean, I guess he'll end up at LSU or A&M, but I wouldn't count on anything right now. That one's really close.
Yeah, I love your disclaimer a few weeks ago that you're out of the prediction game because it's just such a crapshoot in this NIL age that you never know. You literally, I've had somebody who told me a kid was going up to the podium and texted him, "This is where I'm going," and then put on a different hat. So it's kind of, this is the day we're living in. You hearing anything on the running back Derek Cooper? He's one of the top backs in the country. I know he's set to visit Alabama this weekend, but he was a former Georgia commit last summer. Then decommitted, but I know Ohio State's still in on him, Miami, Florida State. But again, just one of those names that I've heard a lot about, Derek Cooper.
This one should end up being Georgia or Miami. It depends on the day of the week. Now, you can take this any way you like, but early on in his life, he liked Miami, but as Georgia just kept getting better and better, he became kind of a Georgia fan, and then he committed. But he committed without his mom's consent. That doesn't normally go over very well with moms, and she would like him staying closer to home. So this is kind of the tug and pull between mom and son. That's one that I wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And then to add on to it, like you said, State, Auburn, Alabama, he has a who's list. Like Alabama is probably the school that nobody has talked about with him at all, but he's going to the capstone. So it wouldn't be the first time that Alabama has just blown somebody away. I mean, with all their Heisman trophies and national titles and all that stuff. Would you really be surprised, Chris, if Alabama got a South Florida kid? It wouldn't be the first time that happened either. Like, they've stole so many kids from Miami over the last 15 years. It's not even funny. So I'm a little bit weary of making a prediction for anybody, but this one in particular, I could see it going a lot of directions, because like it's going back and forth between Georgia and Miami for a while, and he can't make his mind up. Maybe he needs another school to sweep him off his feet. Never know.
There's a kid, a defensive end named Railen McCoy. He was a kid who had committed to LSU and then decommitted. He's from Tupelo, Mississippi, and I know Ole Miss and Auburn and Texas A&M been there, but it's sounding like he's basically down to LSU, Texas, and Florida. So 3 big SEC schools all looking after a guy who's considered one of the top pass rushers in this class.
Depends on who gets him on campus last. Like, last time I talked to him a few weeks ago, he was big on Texas. Then he visited Florida. They did a great job. Florida might be in the lead now. He's having a hard time, kind of like Brown from Baton Rouge, telling teams no. And he's a great guy, very personable, loves going and competing. He was at the Rivals camp in Atlanta recently where I saw him. I don't know where he's going to go, because he's changed his mind a bunch. I'm not sure he knows where he's going to go, but he's 6'6", 250 pounds and really athletic. So those kind of guys just don't grow on trees, and he loves it. Like, he goes and competes in 5-on-5 events, Under Armour, anywhere he can. Coaches love that stuff, and that's why he's got all the offers. So I don't necessarily think this one's done, even if he's told somebody he's committed, because Railen has changed his mind quite a bit, and there's a lot of money that's possibly going to exchange for a guy like that. So again, Chris, I wouldn't touch that prediction with a 10-foot pole.
There's a big offensive tackle, Felix Ojo, or if it's a soft J, Ojo, but he has made, I read this earlier today, he will have made 8 visits between April 18th and June 20th. So he is a traveling man right now. I believe he's heading to Michigan this weekend. He's going to head to Texas next week. Everything I've read has said this sounds like he's going to end up at Texas, but it looks like it's Ohio State, Texas, and even Texas Tech in on him right now.
I've heard the same. The Michigan visit is interesting, though, because they covet offensive linemen with how they want to run that program. And when they want to pony up for a player, there's a certain quarterback that comes to mind. They certainly have NIL at their disposal. Ojo is one of the top 3 or 4 offensive tackles in the class, and he probably will get as much of a red carpet treatment as you're going to get. So Texas has done a great job recruiting him. Texas Tech is kind of the wild card. Their money's crazy. I'd imagine their offers is high, if not higher than anybody's. Then Ohio State kind of set the bar with his official visit there. Another really interesting one, I would pick Texas if I had to choose, but why hasn't he committed yet? And he's been there several times, and most people have picked him there. But why hasn't he committed yet? That is really interesting to me. And Texas needs offensive tackles in this class. It's really important. They missed out on a few last year. Oklahoma, Texas A&M, et cetera, got some of those guys from in-state. They really need to get Ojo.
A couple of uncommitted quarterbacks here, just touching on the latest on them. Let's start with Landon Duckworth. It sounds like, at least, Ole Miss and South Carolina, it's kind of been a 2-horse race between them, and that's where it looks like it still is. Anything on Landon Duckworth and what he's thinking?
Well, the interesting part here is that he's an in-state kid for Auburn. Alabama's not after him. Auburn kind of pivoted to him late, and I'm not hearing any chatter on him, even though he visited there. So I think you're right. With Auburn not being the likely landing spot, maybe it's because Deuce Knight's there as a freshman. This is interesting because Kiffin has done a tremendous job along with the rest of his staff of recruiting him. But at one point, Duckworth was actually committed to South Carolina as a sophomore, backed off of it. But South Carolina never stopped recruiting him really, really hard. This is a guy that's won state titles in basketball, track, football. He's just a great all-around athlete and a great young man. I'm curious to see where he ends up. Like, the playing time, probably easier at South Carolina, but he's really fascinated with Kiffin and that staff. So this is a 6 one way, half dozen the other. It's a flip of a coin. So great recruiting race.
The other one is Bowe Bentley, and it's a 2-horse race between LSU and Oklahoma at this point. The interesting thing is Oklahoma has a quarterback commit already, but he's a lower star. Bowe Bentley's a bigger star, but LSU's got no quarterback. And I know they brought in Michael Van Buren, the transfer from Mississippi State, and he looks like he'll be the guy behind Garrett Nussmeier, but still, the whole rule of thumb, you want to bring in a quarterback every year, Brian, in every class. You want to at least sign one. And Bowe Bentley, I mean, you look at LSU's track record, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, maybe Nussmeier wins a Heisman. That may be attractive, but then, you got John Mateer going over to Oklahoma, and he ain't going to be there forever. So an interesting race for Bowe Bentley.
Yeah, LSU has really went after a bunch of different guys. Jake Fett, the kid committed to Arizona State, Bowe Bentley. They tried a little bit with Keyshawn Henderson. There's been a lot of different stuff, but they've settled on Bowe as their guy. But so has Oklahoma and their new offensive coordinator, Arbuckle. And that's an interesting one because the kid you were talking about is Jaden O'Neal, who's been committed for a while, but he committed to the prior offensive coordinator for the Sooners. So that's murky waters. I don't know if he would even stick if they didn't get Bowe Bentley. If they do, I'd be pretty much shocked if they kept the same two teams or same two people together there. So a lot of moving parts. Some people feel now that it's LSU's to win, but the other part is Bowe grew up an Oklahoma fan, and he's from the Dallas area. I would think Oklahoma would be the logical choice, but logical in today's recruiting world, Chris, means whatever I think, the opposite will happen. So pick LSU. Don't go with what I think.
All right, when we return, we did have some guys make decisions in the past week. We're starting to see some commitments start to trickle down, so we'll touch on a couple of those guys with Brian Smith coming up next. Continue on here, a crossover edition between the portal and Locked On SEC, our Locked On recruiting insider Brian Smith joining us. And Brian, a couple of guys who made decisions this past week. Let's start with Justice Fitzpatrick, the brother of Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the top recruits in the class of 2026, commits to Georgia. He's considered a top 50 overall recruit, number 3 corner in the class of 2026. I think a lot of people were surprised. You didn't want to follow in your brother's footsteps, go to Alabama, but it sounds like he was after all the big schools were after him, but Georgia lands Justice Fitzpatrick. What are they getting in him?
Well, for one thing, the guy that coached his brother is now at Georgia. So that's the connection there. Secondarily, this is a kid that's not quite as fast as his brother. I think his brother's been like a 3-time All-Pro. He's obviously a special player with Steelers. But this is a kid that's a little bigger and weighs a little bit more. He's like 6'1.5", 6'2", 195 pounds. He's probably better as a safety or nickel long-term. I don't think he's a man corner, but he can redirect really well. He's got length, he's got strength, and he's good in the run game. And he plays at St. Thomas Aquinas. So he's been coached and he's been held to an extremely high standard by Roger Harriott and that staff down there at STA. So I expect him to play early at Georgia. The length will be a part of what Kirby always looks for. Like, he is a traits guy more than any other coach in recruiting. It's obviously working out for Georgia, and he knows where to put guys. I've heard nickel is the spot he's going to play. And with that length, I think he would be a really, really good player. So don't expect Minkah's little brother to sit at the bench long in Athens.
Yeah, 4 DBs in this class for Georgia already. So it's go figure. Tell me something I haven't heard before with when it comes to the Georgia Bulldogs. They like their defensive backs. How about Florida picking up a class of 2026 4-star safety in Kaden Hall? Comes from Milton, Florida, just out of Pensacola, and edging out the likes of Alabama, Florida State, and Oklahoma. But Kaden Hall heading to the Gators.
This is one of the most instinctive and reactionary players combined. Like, doesn't matter if the play is a broken play. Doesn't matter if he sees it ahead of time. He just makes the play. He is one of the smartest kids in the high school ranks. Just playmaker, period. I don't care if you recruited him a running back, receiver. He grew up a Florida State fan, and he canceled the Florida State visit after visiting Florida. That is level pretty good for one of the best players in the state of Florida, probably a top 10 kid in the state. And Florida State really needed DBs. So Gator fans are pretty happy about that one. And I don't think he will sit the bench long. He's a guy that can be a 2 or 3 year starter at the SEC level. The athleticism is there, the length, the size, everything. This kid has NFL projection written all over him. And I will be surprised if he is not a 3-and-out guy for the Gators.
There was another guy that the Gators landed a couple days ago, a offensive lineman by the name of, I think it's G''Nivre, and everything I heard about the kid, everybody referred to him as G. They went, hey, G.
Never.
So G. Carr looks like a nice offensive lineman they're getting from IMG Academy.
He is originally from Ocala, and he was like 300 pounds as a freshman. He's always been a really big kid, and he's somebody that's just a pure power player. He'll be an offensive guard for the Gators. It was an easy fit for him because he grew up 35 minutes from the swamp, but they had to beat out Tennessee and Miami and several other programs that also really wanted his services, but still another big pickup because Florida's offensive line recruiting has been very inconsistent over the last 5-6 years. Getting a kid like this is probably somebody that's going to be a multi-year starter for him. So good for the Gators and good for him. He gets to stay home and play for the team that he grew up watching.
Back to Georgia real quick. I did see they got 3-star receiver. Is it Gavin Honore, I guess is how you'd say it. That's a class of 2027, but out of California. I just thought that was interesting because Georgia, tends to recruit the South so well, but every now and then they'll go dip their toe out in the West Coast and grab a kid from over there.
He's also a modern day kid. The running back that they had last year come in as a freshman. That's if you're going to build a pipeline in the greater Los Angeles area, may I suggest modern day, arguably the most prominent high school football program of the last 40 years. So that's a great fit. He's a kid that can really run. And it's ironic because Georgia fans were so mad about the receiver game for Georgia last season. And now they're just falling over with wide receivers in the 26 and 27 class. They've kind of fixed that in a hurry. Georgia is trending in the right direction, and they even got some 25 kids that are really good too. So Georgia has flipped the script on that, and getting a head start on a guy that's that good from modern day, it caught me by surprise too. Even for Georgia, like you said, that was a bit of a surprise. Like if they're getting LA kids a year in advance, good luck to everybody else.
I did see they also landed a 4-star D lineman, Carter Lucky, who I believe is got to be brothers with Lawson Lucky. They're the tight end that's been at Georgia.
Yeah. So that is what you would call, Chris, low hanging fruit. Like if you don't get that one done, you have missed. But he was coveted by a lot of schools. Auburn and a bunch of other programs went after him, and he could have went somewhere else. But not only did they get him, they secured him early. And now Kirby and his staff are going to be able to kind of zero in on the truly elite kids. Let's see, again, like Savion Hyder and some of these other guys that some other schools probably are trending for. Let's see if they can't surprise somebody and get one of those kids, because they're going to be able to focus all their efforts on it. Georgia, like you said earlier, if they finished outside the top 2 in recruiting, wouldn't be shocking, but I think it's a pretty good bet that they end up right there. Like number 3 is probably about as far down as I think they would finish.
Last one for you, Brian. I saw Arkansas. They got a couple big ones. A kid out of Prosper, Texas, 4-star O-tackle Bryce Gilmore, and then a 3-star linebacker Caleb Gordon out of the state of North Carolina. And don't look now, but Sam Pittman's group, 17 commitments, sitting as the 11th best class in the 24/7 composite. It's just a weird thing because everybody feels like he's on the hot seat, and so is Billy Napier at Florida. It's hurting Napier, yet here's Sam Pittman just rolling up recruit after recruit after recruit.
Chris, name a school that is more shocking in recruiting right now than Arkansas. I dare you. There isn't. Yeah. It's not even close. That is 100% the answer, and you are right to bring it up. First off, golf clap for the Arkansas Razorbacks. They're getting kids out of Texas. They're getting kids all over the place. They're keeping kids home. Like, these are the things they didn't do. When they were good in the 70s and 80s, they used to raid Dallas. They used to get a ton of those kids. Well, the big offensive lineman they just got, that's an example of what they used to do, like when Lou Holtz coached there in the mid-70s and stuff. Now they're doing it again, and it's changing their program. But again, it starts at home. Some of the key kids in that state always go to Bama, or they go to LSU, or they go to Ole Miss, whatever. They're keeping them home this year. Now they get a cherry pick a little bit. I have never said that about Arkansas recruiting, ever. I've never thought about it. And I think it's quite honestly pretty cool. Good for the Razorbacks, man. I don't explain why it happens because I don't have a clue. Again, 17 commitments for Arkansas right now is far and away the biggest shock in recruiting so far. But it's a good trend because I'm tired of the same teams always having all the players. Good for Arkansas and good for the SEC to have a little mix-up.
Yeah, your top 4 teams right now in recruiting in the SEC: Georgia, Texas A&M, LSU, and Arkansas. Crazy. That'll change in the next couple weeks, but
yeah.
Crazy.
But still, it's great for now. I love it.
Brian, always appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much for the conversation. And, hey, appreciate you guys for listening and watching this crossover edition of The Portal and Locked On SEC. And check out our show. If you check out us, typically, Locked On SEC, you could check out Brian. He's got you covered with all the latest movings and shakings and signings over on The Portal show. Be the most informed fan on all the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find Locked On SEC or The Portal wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy for Brian Smith. Talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC and The Portal.